Hi, this is Doug from Dynamic Computing, and welcome to episode 123 of 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast. This week, we're going back and revisiting my lovely Amiga 600 down here, that one right there. Now, this machine, of course, came from my good friend Tim Drew, aka Sanxion, who's a member of the Pixel Gaiden team. You guys know Pixel Gaiden, they're awesome. Now, he got me a really great deal on this Amiga 600, but would I be content with just leaving the thing alone and not expanding it? No, this is me. So, first thing I did after I made sure it was up and running was I ordered myself a nice Furia card. Now, most of us have heard of the Furia card, and most of us also know the reason for the name of the Furia card is that it gets infuriating to try and get it to work. It's a great card, 68020 running at like 33 megahertz. It's got a 68882 FPU on it. It has adjustable between 4, 5.5, 8, and 10.5 megabytes of memory. It's a cool card, snaps right onto the CPU. But its biggest issue is that it only works with a very, very, very limited amount of compact flash cards. Even with the latest firmware update, which is what I have on here, I can only get it to work with maybe 1 out of every 6 or 7 CF cards or SD cards I try and use. And there just doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it. Sometimes I'll use the same model of card or same generation, just a little different size, refuses to work. Or you can load Workbench on it and then everything crashes. Really strange. The other issue I had, and I'll link to the video up here about it, is I tried to use my Furia. Once I got it working, and I found a CF card, it worked absolutely flawlessly with it, loved it. Once I got it working, I then got the RGB to HDMI adapter from our good friend Joaquin, and I'll put a link to that video up here. That, of course, uses a little Raspberry Pi in conjunction with a cool little interface that snaps on right onto the Denise chip in there and gives you absolutely rock solid, even in interlace modes, rock solid HDMI output on your Amiga 600. Worked fantastic. Worked beautifully. I could have it in there with a 68,000 processor and my 2 megs of chip RAM. It would work all day long. I could put my Furia in there, have my Furia working at 68020. It would work all day long. You try to put the two of them together, boom, it wouldn't work. It would lock up the display, lock up the whole computer. Never could figure out why. Worked with several people, couldn't come up with a solution. Does this mean the Furia is bad? No, it means the Furia is picky. Honestly, the Amiga 600 was not designed ever by Commodore to be expandable. I mean, it's got no capabilities of expansion beyond a meg of chip RAM added into the belly slot and then 4 megs of fast RAM added into the PCMCIA socket. That is literally about as far forward as they were thinking on it because they wanted it to be just a cheap and cheerful little, hey, here's a little computer. But of course, we Amiga users have to take things to the extreme. So what did I do? Let's take a look. There's the guts of our little Amiga 600. And look what we have here. We have the A630 card manufactured by arki-tech.com.pl in Poland by our friend Piotr. And this little card is a little beauty. It is also a card that snaps right onto the 68,000 socket. See, it's got a little chip there, that socket that slides right over it. Clips in nicely. It's nice and firm. I had 0 issues with mine. This has a 68030 on it, which is really, really nice because this 68030 is the full 32-bit version. It's not like on the Furia where they used a 68020, but they used the LC version that is the hybrid of the 16 and 32-bit and does not allow you to address lots of memory. This little guy will address all the memory you can throw at it. Now, in theory, you could probably put a couple gigs of memory and have the chip address it. But in reality, we're not going to see that on this. This is going to have 64 megabytes of fast memory right on board. Now, this chip is overclocked. You'll see it's also the pin type, not the little flat PLCC type, but it's the pin type chip. PGA, I believe, is what they call that. And it is overclocked. So the model I got, it was an extra $10, but I got the kind with a heatsink and a fan. He also sells a version that just has the heatsink, but she runs very quietly. I've not heard any disturbing noises from the inside of my machine since I put this in. And what's this interesting little contraption just to the left of it? Well, this is something new that's being distributed by our good friend Frank at RetroRewind.ca. And what this is a Buffered IDE interface. Plugs right into the IDE port, but it adds buffering. And it allows you to use an SD card instead of a CF card. So it saves a little space. See, it fits in there nicely, doesn't hit anything. And this actually works tremendously well with the Furia also. It had no issues at all. I even reloaded a new operating system when I had that plugged in with my Furia card right there. Furia recognizes this, no issues. Now here's the back side of the card right here, and you'll see there's the little socket where it plugs right into the 68,000 CPU, which is right here. You want to be careful. It comes with this little rubber bumper right in the package. You just peel off the sticky back, and you want to use this little rubber bumper, because if you don't, you could have bad luck like one of our other friends, YouTubers, had with their A630. And apparently the bottom of the 68030 chip hit here because he didn't have the little rubber bumper on there, and it shorted something out, or maybe it hit over here. So just use the little rubber bumper, and it gives the little cushion and the separation that the card needs. Just be aware when you're plugging it in. You don't want metal to touch metal. That's a bad thing. Now, while we're here, you will notice that I do have my RGB to HDMI interface plugged right in. And guess what? It works perfect with this card, as we're going to see in a minute. Now that we have our nice little A630 card installed in the machine, let's take a look at it. First of all, you see up here at the top, we've got 2 megabytes of chip RAM, and we have 64 megabytes of other memory, of fast memory, which is fantastic. Now, the reason this is fantastic is because when we're using 32-bit memory like this, we have no issues with the PCMCIA socket at all. When we're using something like the Furia and we're trying to use PCMCIA, we can't use the full 8 or 10.5 megabytes of memory on 9.5 megabytes of memory on the Furia. We have to use either 4 or 5.5 megabytes because the Amiga 600 uses the address space for that upper 4 megabytes of memory for the PCMCIA socket. 32-bit memory, we don't have that problem. Full 68030 CPU, full MMU, no floating point unit. This is critical. There's no floating point unit in this, nor is there necessarily a plan to put one in. Now you can see it's quite zippy. When we're going around and opening things up, performance is great. This is a 4-color workbench, but even when we upgrade it to like an 8-color workbench, it's really not half bad. Moving things around, still plenty zippy, absolutely usable, perfectly great. Now let's take a look at a little bit of benchmarking here. And of course, we have to use our normal benchmark utilities. And we're going to go into our sysinfo. Sysinfo recognizes it as the full 68030 with no FPU, as we would expect. So when we do a speed test on here, we're getting a much larger number than we get with the 68020 based Furia. Now you're also going to notice there's no MFLOPS test on here because that relates to the floating point unit. Now how about our drive speed? On the Furia, it has built-in code that allows you to dramatically speed up the hard drive access up to pretty close to 3 megabytes per second. This does not have the code, so we're going to be dealing with somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 megabytes per second hard drive speed, which is not half bad. I mean, that's pretty good for an Amiga 600. It's par for the course. Now let's take a look at another really nice test, AIBB. This actually works just fine. We'll tell it 68030. We'll just run a couple little tests here. Not too shabby. She comes in substantially faster than the Furia, which again, I will have the two of them side by side so we can see the Furia compared to the 50 megahertz 68030 that's running here. Now, where this is going to choke is on tests that use the floating point unit, because there is no floating point unit, so it has to do everything in software. So if we do the beach ball on here, while it generates it fairly quickly with its 50 megahertz 68030, it would not be as fast as the Furia 33 megahertz Furia, because the Furia is using an FPU. The Furia would generate this substantially faster. Let's take a look at a couple of real-world tests. My favorite program, Art Department Professional. Now I have this loaded on here in non-FPU mode. You have a choice when you install it of installing it with an FPU or no FPU. So obviously I've got this no FPU on here. Let's take a look at a file. Now we've got that loaded up off of floppy. It's coming in as a 1280 by 960 image. Full 24-bit color. Let's scale it down and see how the scaling works. We're going to scale it to 768 by 566, a nice high-resolution PAL image. See how quickly that scales without a floating point unit. With a floating point unit, scaling is faster, but with a 68030 running at 50 megahertz, this isn't bad. I can't imagine my Furia would be doing it much faster than this. So the increase in clock speed does help compensate sometimes for the lack of an FPU, but not all the time. So we've got that cut down to 768 by 566. Let's change, and we're going to go to high resolution in 16 colors, because that's all an Amiga 600 can handle. And we'll generate the image and see how long it takes to generate it. Not bad, really. This is doing a pretty good job, easily as fast as when I did this same project with the Furia. Pretty close. And you see it does a nice job converting the 24-bit color image to a nice 16-color high-resolution image. Not too shabby. So I'm pretty impressed. How about games on this little guy? Now this is one of my favorite games. This is River Raid Reloaded. Came out in 2019, and it is a remake of the Atari 2600 classic River Raid, but for the Amiga, and with a couple of other little tricks here. This one is absolutely a blast to play. Love this. Love the music, love the performance, and you see with a 68030, she runs just beautifully. Here's a cool little extra. Shoot a fuel tank, it blows up everything on the screen like a smart bomb. But don't do it when you're low on fuel, because you will regret it. Oh, nice job, Doug. Of course, WHD Load is fantastic in that it takes these games that generally don't work well with accelerators and actually allows them to work okay with a lot of accelerators, which is nice. This one is Pinball Dreams, I believe, and we're going to go with Nightmare. Let's see how badly we do here. Oh, look at that! Look at that speed. And of course, on a normal 68,000, these pinball games actually work beautifully. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Look at that smooth animation. Look at that mediocre play style. Try to hit anything, Doug. Anything at all would be great. Oh my goodness. Okay, I never said I was good at the game. I said it was a beautiful game. Oh look, I actually did something. One thing. I love these pinball games. Now, one thing about the A630 that I was truly curious about was how it dealt with the standard onboard IDE of the Amiga 600. We all know that the Furia is picky, and there's a list about this long of actual CF cards and SD cards it works reliably with. So, I took a couple of my normal cards that I had tried with the Furia, perfectly good cards, a 32 gig CF card, an SD card, things that would not work with the Furia at all, and I loaded Workbench on them on the A630, flawless. First time, boom, works. That right there, that's just about worth the price of admission. The fact that it works with almost any compact flash or SD card solution or hard drive solution we come up with, that's worth it right there. Now, yes, the Furia does have a bit of an advantage when you get a card working because it has the IDE boost feature that gets you almost an extra megabyte per second of performance out of the drive. But that's if you can get a compact flash that actually works. So, you know, it's a trade-off. Now, how about the FPU? Yes, I love the fact that the Furia has an FPU, no doubt about it, because the kind of work I do, which is a lot of photographic manipulation on the Amigas, requires an FPU to really, you know, you're moving things, you're scaling, you're resizing, you're doing this, and the FPU really helps with that. And that was nice on the Furia. But the Furia was limited to 9.5 megabytes of fast memory, which means a lot of the images that I would normally use on my Amiga 1200 or 3000 or even my Amiga 1000 of the Vampire, they wouldn't load. There wasn't enough physical memory to manipulate it. So yes, it had the FPU, but it did not have the memory to actually manipulate the images, so it was useless anyways. So this, at least, I'm able to load the JPEG images that I need to load, the large 3 and 4 megabyte JPEG images that blow up to 30 or 40 or 50 megabytes, and manipulate them on an ECS Amiga. So again, it's a trade-off. Is the trade-off worth it? To me, yes, because if I need something that requires an FPU, I'll throw it on my Amiga 1200, I'll throw it on my Amiga 3000, my Amiga 4000, whatever. I've got FPUs in all those. But for the kind of stuff I want to do on this machine, this is perfect. Games I had very few problems with. There was one issue where I tried to play Worthy, which is one of my favorite games, and it locked up. Don't know why, I'll have to figure it out. But most games work just fine on this system. Heat has been no problem. I've had it running for hours. I've got no problems with anything feeling hot. I have no problems with noise, even though it has a fan. That's cool. The thing that makes me the happiest is the fact that this works with my RGB to HDMI. Once you get away from using the Amiga's built-in video on a 1084 and you actually see it on a nice big monitor, it's really hard to go back. And I'm talking with the kind of stuff I'm doing, because yes, a lot of video games look better on a CRT. I will give you that 100%. But when you're manipulating, you know, large graphics images in interlace mode, you try and look at an interlace screen for more than 5 minutes and your eyes start vibrating along with the darn interlace. So I like a non-interlace display. On my Amiga 600, I've had to use one of the SCART to HDMI solutions. You'll see it in my upscaler video right there. That works fine. That's fine. It's mediocre. It's C+ to B- quality. It's fine. but compared to RGB to HDMI and the rock solid display you get out of that, there's just no comparison. So the fact I can use it now, I love it. Absolutely love it. So final analysis here. Is it worth getting a Furia or worth getting an A630? Honestly, I would go with the A630. Yeah, the Furia is cool, the Furia is neat, the Furia is cheap. I love it, okay? It's wonderful. But for a couple bucks more, you got a 50 megahertz 68030, you've got 64 megabytes of RAM, and you can actually use any CF card or SD card solution you want to, and it just works. Throw in the fact that you don't have to do a special reboot in order to use less memory on the Furia to let your PCMCIA cards work. You're great, you know. Throw a networking card in here, it just works. Throw a one of the cards that allowed you to use a CF card and interchange data with your PC. It just works. You don't have to fight with it. It's nice. The next bit of good news is our friend Frank from Retro Rewind is going to start selling these, and probably is already selling them on his website. So here's the link, retrorewind.ca. Send Frank a message if you don't see it on the website yet, because it'll probably be there in a couple of days. And we can get these right here in North America, no problems at all. If you're in Europe, buy it from Piotr. He's a great guy at the website that I'll list down there. Fantastic. I worked with him directly. We had a little bit of an issue where the PayPal invoice didn't show up properly, but he's got it all resolved now. It's all working. It got to me in just a couple of days. Fantastic, and he's a great guy. Huge thanks to my patrons. If you'd like to join in on the fun and help support 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast, pop on over to Tenmark Patreon page at patreon.com/Tenmark. $2 a month, you're in like Flynn. Your name can also be displayed along with the half-bright dancer that we have right here. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. Thanks for joining me today. Pick one of these cards up. If you've been having problems with a Furia and it's been infuriating you like it has me, this is worth the price of admission right here. This is fantastic. Please like and subscribe. Tell me your Amiga 600 stories, what you use for acceleration, or if you're a traditionalist and you insist on only using it with 2 megs of chip RAM and a 68,000. Boring. Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. But until next time, this is Doug from 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast, signing out.